Welcome to another message from Systematic Theology. We're studying from the textbook, Lectures in Systematic Theology by Thiessen. We're on page 64, chapter 4, The Non-Christian Worldviews of Theology and God. To anyone who gives thoughtful consideration to the proofs of God's existence already advanced, the evidence appears conclusive. The evidence appears conclusive. He can only exclaim, "Surely there is a God." God himself regards the evidence as conclusive. God would have given more evidence. Well, what could he give more evidence than sending his Son into this world and creating the world and showing the universe as we see it? We deduce this not only from the fact that if he did not so regard it, he wouldn't have given us more, but also from the express declarations to that effect in Romans 1, 18 through 20. Acts 14, 17, 24 through 29. To believe in the existence of God is therefore the normal and natural thing to do from the human soul, the human mind, and the human natural intellect. And agnosticism and atheism are the abnormal and unnatural positions of the human mind. Indeed, the latter are tantamount to saying that God has not furnished us with sufficient evidence of his existence, and such attitudes are in reflection on a benevolent and holy God, and are sinful in nature, origin, and source. Nevertheless, men as a whole have refused to have God in their knowledge. Romans 1 and 28. Sin has so distorted their vision and corrupted their hearts as to make them reject the evidence and go on without a God, or set up gods of their creation. Without a God, or set up gods of their invention. We shall therefore next briefly examine the leading non-Christian world views and reply to them. They fall into 6 great classes as follows. The atheistic view. In a certain sense, all non-Christian religions are atheistic, in the sense that they do not recognize the only true God. But in a more restricted sense, the term atheism is limited to 3 distinct types, to those which are known as practical atheism, dogmatic atheism, and virtual atheism. Let us now notice the differences between them. Practical atheism. Practical atheism is found among many uneducated people. They have been disappointed by certain Christians and have rashly decided that all religion is a fake and a facade. Yet they have not so much lost faith in the existence of God as in the people who claim to be his children and fall into existence of God and fail to live up to their profession. People like this are usually not confirmed atheists. They merely excuse their indifference on the ground of inconsistencies in certain professed Christians. That's one of the biggest excuses. I don't go to church because they're full of hypocrites. You've heard that. They may, however, be called practical atheists so far as their religious interests are concerned. Dogmatic atheism is a type that openly profess atheism. Most people do not boldly flaunt their atheism before men, for the term is one of such reproach that there are some who do not shrink from declaring themselves atheists. They proudly proclaim it. In recent years, there have been a revival of this kind of atheism in America. In 1925, Charles Smith, an ex-divinity student, founded the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism, and it has made some inroads in our colleges and universities, but in the Scientific Monthly in August 1944, A.J. Carlson, president of the American Association of the Advancement of Science, himself an avowed disbeliever, says, "The handful of liberal and informed people who have worked their way out of a cocoon of supernaturalism does not even make a respectable leaven in the college of graduate group." Paul V. Anderson says that the 5-year plan of the Godless Society of Russia during 1928 and 1933 did not attain to more than 1/3 of its goal in membership. Paul B. Anderson's The People, Church, and State in Modern Russia. During the years 1933 through 37, the membership in the Militant Atheist League actually decreased from 5 million to 2 million. There's something lacking in atheism. There's something lacking. Virtual atheism is the kind that holds principles that are inconsistent with the belief in God and that defines him in terms that do violence to the common usage of language. Most of the thoroughgoing naturalists of the past and present belong to the first of these varieties. Naturalism holds that nature is the whole of reality, that nature is reality. In recent times, it has appeared as materialism, positivism, and energism. Materialism has recently lost face with the scientist philosopher by the splitting of the atom, and the discovery of the ultimate reality is not a solid but a charge, an electrical charge. Positivism is really an agnostic type and will be noted under that head. Energism has not yet formulated a complete philosophy. It has not yet been able to explain mind in terms of pure energy. It has not been able to explain mind in terms of pure energy. Those who define God in such abstractions as an active principle in nature, the moral order of the universe, the cosmic flux, the social consciousness, and the unknoble are atheists of the second of these varieties, and they are really doing violence to the established meaning of the term God. Theism, too, has its well-established nomenclature in nomenclature, and it cannot be juggled at will to suit the fancy of the modern belief. The atheist position is a very unsatisfactory, unstable, arrogant one. It is unsatisfactory because all the atheists lack the assurance of the forgivings of their sins. They lack the assurance of the forgiveness of their sins. They all have cold and empty life, and they all know nothing of peace and fellowship with God. It is unstable because it is contrary to man's deepest convictions. Both Scripture and history show that man necessarily and universally believes in the existence of God. We might say in the existence of a God at least. The virtual atheism testifies to this fact in that he adopts an abstraction to account for the world and its life. It is arrogant because it is really pretends to be omniscient. Limited knowledge can infer the existence of God, but exhaustive knowledge of all things, intelligence and times is needed to state dogmatically there is none. The dogmatic atheist is to be explained as being an abnormal condition. An abnormal condition, not normal, abnormal condition. Just as the pendulum of a clock can be pushed off to the center by an external force, so the mind of man can be pushed off its normal position by false philosophy. When the force is removed, both the pendulum and the human mind return to their normal positions. Static gravity. The agnostic view. Now, I might say this in passing through this parenthetically. In part of my life, my stepfather that raised me was an atheist. And I went to church. I was saved. But I was greatly influenced by this man that I love deeply. I never was comfortable with agnosticism or atheism. And I always said that I don't believe in God, but if God could reveal himself to me, that I would believe in him and follow him and be an adherent to the Bible and the beliefs. Well, God did make himself known to me. I had been saved and I went off on the wrong path because I had the wrong influences. But I wasn't static in that. I was seeking still for God. One time, mistakenly, I did this. One of my best friends in this world that I just loved tremendously died suddenly. And I went to the funeral home where he was, and I sat there and I said, Homer, tell me, is there an afterlife? Can you let me know that there's an afterlife? See, I was ignorant of the Bible and all of this. And then I prayed to God. I said, God, if there is an afterlife, you are really there, let me know it. He already had in my life. It was already there from very, very earliest age, infancy almost. I had to be taught that there was no God. But I came back to the level. The bubble was level. And I began to read the Bible, and I began to see the beauty and the perfection of the Word of God. And that's why I'm teaching it today. I went from a believer to an atheist and an agnostic by training. And then when it was not there anymore, I came back to center. The term agnostic sometimes applied to any doctrine that affirms the impossibility of any true knowledge, holding that all knowledge is relative and therefore uncertain. There are no such rules. It is relative to the situation. In this sense, the Greek sophists and skeptics, as also all the empiricists from Aristotle down to Hume, were agnostics. In theology, however, the terms is limited to those which affirm that neither the existence nor the nature of God, nor yet the ultimate nature of the universe is known or knowable. Herbert Spencer, 1820 to 1903, and Thomas H. Huxley, 1825 to 1895, are often referred to as agnostics in the theological sense of the term. That is true of Huxley, of course, but Spencer was in reality a combination of positivism and pantheist. George B. Fisher, Grounds of the Theistic and Christian Belief, New York, Charles Scribner's Sons, 1902, page 81. Albert Ritschl, 1822 to 1889, and his followers were also really agnostic. Positivism in science and pragmatism in the philosophy and theology are the outstanding types of agnosticism in recent times. August Comte, 1798 to 1859, the founder of positivism, decided to accept nothing as true beyond the details of observed facts. Since the idea of God could not thus be subjected to examination, he omitted it and devoted himself entirely to the study of phenomena. But Einstein's theory of relativity has shown that we have to reckon with the intangibles for the instance of time and space, even in the study of the physical world. His theory has dealt a death blow to positivism. Pragmatism in philosophy and theology are like positivism in science. It rejects a special revelation and the competence of reason to the study of ultimate reality. It argues, however, that since suspense of judgment is not only painful, but often even costly and impossible, that we should adopt the view that yields the best results, according to Albert Ritschel, 1822 to 1889, and William James, 1842 to 1910, adopt a fiat God, a pragmatic postulation of his existence in order to secure a certain desirable results. John Dewey, in 1859, continuing at the writing of this book, contents himself with postulating vague abstractions. The agnostic position, too, is highly unsatisfactory and unstable and often displays itself a false humility. It is unsatisfactory because it suffers the same spiritual impoverishment as does the atheist, but it is unsatisfactory also from the intellectual standpoint. Agnosticism proves this in its adoption of tentative views as a working hypothesis. It is unstable in that it admits that it has not attained the absolute certainty. Ritschel and James claim to have reached a fair measure of stability in their beliefs, but Dewey holds that his belief is very temporary, and if often displays a false humility, in that it claims to know little. Agnostics mean they say know nothing. Others, some agnostics charge haughtily, pretend to have superior understanding, like Gnostics, and they frankly recognize man's true limitations and knowledge. Now, from the Christian standpoint, this is false humility, for it regards the evidence for the existence as a personal and extra mundane, almighty and holy God as an ample and conclusive. Number 3, on page 67, the pantheistic view. Pantheistic means what? All God. Everything's God. It comes from pan and theist, 2 Greek words. Everything God. One who everything gods. Flint defines pantheism theory which regards all finite things as merely aspects and modification of parts of the one eternal and self-existent being, which views all material objects and all particular minds as necessarily derived from a single finite substance. Robert Flint. It appears in a variety of forms today, some of them having in them also atheistic, polytheistic, and theistic elements. Devotees of pantheism usually look upon their beliefs as a religion, bringing to them a kind of reverential submission. For that reason, the inadequate in pantheism needs to be all the more clearly comprehended. We shall set forth in the briefest manner possible the character of the leading types of pantheism, and then present the Christian refutation of them. The leading types of pantheism. The following are the leading types of pantheism. Materialistic pantheism holds that matter is the cause of all life and mind, and David Strauss, 1808 to 1874, believed in the eternity of matter, and that's what we talked about the other day. Is matter eternal? Now, they believe in the eternity of that matter is eternal. Now, we know that the universe is not eternal, and we know that it had a starting point when they discovered this Big Bang Theory, and the Big Bang Theory is nothing more than God creating the heavens and the earth. Strauss believed in the eternity of matter and in the spontaneous generation of life. He held that the universe, the totality of existence that we call nature, and this is what we call evolution in all reality, is the only God which the modern man, enlightened by science, can consent to worship. Joseph Ernest Renan, in 1823 to 1892, and Ernest Haeckel, 1834 to 1919, were also materialistic pantheists. But the belief in eternal matter is an illogical assumption. The doctrine of spontaneous generation has been discarded by all true scientists. Hylozoism and panpsychism are earlier and later names for the same thing. There are, however, two types of this theory. The first holds that every particle of matter has, besides its physical properties, also a principle of life in it. We're talking about evolution. What we're talking about. We're talking about evolution. We're talking about the survival of the fittest. We're talking about genetic selection, self-selection. The earliest form emphasized the physical properties and was practically a type of materialism. The modern form goes back to G.W. Leibniz, 1716, who emphasized that the psychical properties. He held that the ultimate units are not atoms but monads, little souls having the power of perception and appetite. The second holds that mind and matter are distinct but intimately and inseparably united. God, on this view, is the soul of the world. God is the soul of the world. The Stoics held this form of hylasism. Gustav T. Fechner, 1801 to 1887, has revived this form of panpsychism. Both types are forms of pantheism. Panpsychism means all souls. Panpsychism means all souls. It's another form from Greek. Neutralism is a form of monism which holds that the ultimate reality is neither nor mind nor matter, but neutral stuff of which mind and matter are but appearances and aspects. Baruch Spinoza, 1632 to 1677, he didn't live very long, did he? Is the best representative of this type. He held that there is but one substance with two attributes, thought and extension, or mind and matter, the totality of which is God. F.W.I. Schelling, 1775 to 1854, took over Spinoza's doctrine of monism. He called this ultimate reality the holy, ever creating original energy of the world, which generates and busily evolves all things out of itself. Bertrand Russell, 1872 forward, also holds to this type of neutral monism, but it is a monism that admits the multiplicity of events. Neutralism is a classical type of pantheism. Neutralism is a classical type of pantheism. Idealism holds that the ultimate reality is the nature of mind and that the world is the product of mind, either of the individual mind of the infant mind. George Berkeley, 1685 to 1753, a subject idealist, held that the objects which I perceive are my perceptions and not the things themselves. What I see is what I believe. What I see is what I invent. That is, everything exists only in mind, and this is where we have our Mary Baker Eddy Christian Science baloney. But we reply, that is, everything exists only in my mind, then other people and God also exist in the same way only. Indeed, logically, I must conclude that I only exist, which is reducing the theory to absurdity. George W. F. Hegel, 1770 to 1831, who, like Fichte and Schelling, began a theological student, took up Fichte's thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and speculation, and devoted and developed it to his own logical conclusion. He is considered the typical objective idealist. You see where all this is going on in churches today. Mm-hmm. Churches, what I mean, are entities that call themselves churches. Christian Science, Buddhism, the whole idea. Objective idealism is also known as absolute idealism. Subjective idealism says the world is my idea. The world is my idea. It doesn't exist outside of my idea. Objective idealism says it is an idea. Hegel says reality is thought and reason. The world is a great thought process. It is, as we might say, God thinking. We have only to find out the laws of the thought to know the laws of reality. What we call nature is thought externalized. It is the absolute reason revealing itself in an outward form, but nature is not its final goal. Returning it expresses itself more fully in human self-consciousness, and in the end finds its complete realization in art, religion, and philosophy. There are two main types of absolute idealism current today: imperial and personalistic absolutism, and personalistic absolutism. Impersonalistic absolutism holds that the ultimate reality is one single mind or one unified system, and it denies that this mind or system is personal. F. H. Bradley, 1846 to 1924, and Bernard Bosanquet, 1848 to 1923, and the British idealistic movement are perhaps the best known representatives of this view. Personalistic absolutism holds to the absolute is a person. He includes with himself all the finite selves and shares the experience of these selves because they are numerically a part of him. While he also has thoughts and other than thoughts, Thomas H. Green, 1836-1882, Edward Card, 1835 to 1908, and Joseph Royce, 1835 to 1950, Mary W. Calkins, and William E. Hawking are representatives of this view. And that's where we'll finish for tonight. Well, let's go with one more point here, number 5. The philosophical mysticism is the most absolute type of monism in existence. The most absolute type of monism in existence. The idealist still distinguishes between the outside world and himself, the great self and all finite selves, but the mystic, the sense of otherness, drops out altogether, and the knower realizes that he is identical with the inner being of his subject. Ultimate reality is a unit, and it is indescribable. The human self is not merely like in mind, but identical with it, and union with this absolute is realized by moral effort rather than theoretical abstractions. Universalism is all in this. We have the modern, what we call theories of the people in Hollywood, in reincarnation, and the great mind that just evolves from person to person, like in Buddhism. It's not new. This is old stuff. Many of the great moralists and men of the letters of England and America have distinctive mystical leanings. For example, Cambridge Platonist Cudworth Moore Smith, and the American Transcendentalist Thoreau Emerson, Transcendental Meditation. A number of the great poets who have mystical elements in their writing, including this survey of pantheistic views, we would recur to the statements made at the beginning of this section, that some pantheists have atheistic, polytheistic, theistic elements in their theories. The 5 types have been treated as pantheistic simply because that is their real and principal character. The errors and destructive character of them must now be briefly pointed out. The next one, we will get to the refutation of the pantheistic theories, and that's where we will begin our next class. I might say this in closing. I was taught to be an atheist and taught to be an agnostic. My natural senses, my natural adherence was as all men that knew that there was a God. I even had a personal relationship with God, but I was so young and I had no help, no leadership whatsoever in my life and my home life to guide me to the point that I am today in studying and preaching God's Word. God revealed Himself to me through His Word. Through the Holy Spirit, He guided me in the study of it. One time when I was a very young preacher, they would have revivals and have me come preach as a converted atheist. I converted from Christendom to atheism and came back home to true reality of Christianity. Not Christendom, but Christianity. There's the difference. Many Catholics have left the Catholic Church to become agnostics because everything there is made up. It's facade. It is mysticism. It is pantheism. It is idolatry. It is all these things. And they irrationally get a view and they said, I'm an idolater. I believe in many gods. I believe in all this stuff. So they said, this is ridiculous. I am an agnostic in all reality. And they leave the Catholic Church. And it's hard to reach those people back into Christianity because Catholicism is not Christianity. It is a facade. We see this in many religious circles. Christian Science. Mormonism is a polytheistic view, pantheistic view. It is a New Age thing. The New Age movement in the Hollywood. The New Age movement is a pantheistic view. These are the things that we have been studying tonight. I hope that you're out there, and if you're in flux and you don't know what to believe, maybe you are an atheist or agnostic because of what's happened in your life. Can you see from the study that we've done tonight that that is an unrealistic, unscientific view? You can come to Christ, who died for you on the cross of Calvary, believing that God sent forth His Son, died on the cross, was buried, rose again in the resurrection, and He stands forevermore to make intercession for us. We're saved. We're not saved as sinless individuals. We're saved as saved sinners. There are two kinds of sinners in the world, saved ones and lost ones. But once you become a child of God, from that point of time on, you sin securely but safely never, as the old story was. We know better. We know better. And we're not happy in sin again in life. When you're lost, you just do what you want to. You have to subdue your conscience. But you can just go on and have all kinds of fun out there in the sinful world. Child of God can't do that. Father, I send this message out to comfort people's hearts, to help them understand the religious world that we live in today, the evolution of religion, that these errors that people believe today are nothing new but old rehash. Father, forgive us for your failure. Help, I pray that you glorify yourself through this word, that you stabilize wandering souls out there. Forgive me where I failed you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Do you have any questions?
Well, the old devil's happy with atheism.
The old devil's happy with it.
That's what it sounds like.
The devil isn't an atheist. He's not an agnostic
No,
either.
but he's happy with what they're doing.
Yes.